Emma Clarke had always chosen the window seat. Not for the view, though she did love watching the clouds roll like mountains of cream, but because the window made her invisible. Passengers who wanted to talk usually targeted the aisle. The middle seat was an unavoidable lottery, but the window, that was sanctuary, and Emma wanted to be invisible. At 23, she carried silence like armor. Life had taught her early that the world didn't always listen when you spoke, and when it did, it didn't always understand. Seat 14A on Flight 372 was her hiding place for the next 6 hours, high above the Atlantic. She had a novel in her lap she probably wouldn't finish, headphones she wouldn't turn on, and eyes that kept drifting back to the clouds. No one on the plane knew her name. No one knew her story. And she was comfortable with that. Until the pilot collapsed, and the radio cried Mayday. It began quietly, almost imperceptibly. The captain's steady announcements had filled the cabin earlier. Smooth takeoff, cruising altitude, estimated arrival time. But then came an eerie pause. At first, Emma thought nothing of it. She turned a page in her book. A baby cried in row 9. An attendant wheeled past with juice. Then, commotion. A muffled thud. Gasps from the front. The intercom crackled, but instead of words, only static hissed. Moments later, a flight attendant ran down the aisle, panic flickering across her trained smile. She vanished into the cockpit. Whispers swelled like rising waves. Then came the announcement no passenger ever wants to hear. Ladies and gentlemen. The co-pilot's voice trembled, thin and strained. This is First Officer Reynolds. The captain has suffered a medical emergency. I'm declaring a mayday. The quiet girl in 14A looked up. For the first time in years, all eyes turned toward her, not because of who she was, but because of what she would soon become. Emma's pulse quickened. She gripped the armrest, nails digging into the leather. She wasn't supposed to be noticed. She wasn't supposed to matter. But fate doesn't ask permission. She'd kept it buried for years, the fact that she had once wanted to be a pilot. Her father, a decorated airman, had taught her the fundamentals when she was still a teenager. Summer evenings in a dusty hangar, learning to hold a yoke steady, to trust instruments when clouds blinded you. She had logged hours in simulators, even taken the controls of a Cessna under supervision. But then her father was gone, taken suddenly in an accident that left her afraid of both the sky and herself. She abandoned the dream, burying it beneath textbooks and day jobs. Now, staring at the terrified faces around her, the dream clawed its way back. The co-pilot's voice cracked again through the intercom. Is there anyone on board with flight experience? Any pilots? A suffocating silence followed. Passengers shifted, murmured, shook their heads. The attendants glanced at one another, helpless. Emma's chest tightened. This was the moment. Her hand shook as she unbuckled her seatbelt. The quiet girl in seat 14A stood up. Excuse me, Emma said softly, her voice almost drowned by the noise of panic. I might be able to help. The nearest flight attendant blinked at her. Do you have flight experience? A little, Emma admitted. Her father's voice echoed in her head. Never say you can if you can't. But never hide when you can help. Within moments, she was ushered past wide-eyed passengers toward the cockpit. Inside, the sight stole her breath. The captain, unconscious, pale, slumped against his harness. The co-pilot, sweat beading on his brow, fought to keep control. Emma's heart pounded. Every nerve screamed at her to run back to the safety of 14A. But something stronger held her in place. I know some basics, she whispered. I've flown small aircraft before. The co-pilot studied her with desperate eyes, then gave a single, trembling nod. Sit down. Emma slid into the captain's seat. For the first time in a decade, her hands wrapped around a yoke. It felt both foreign and achingly familiar. And as the plane shuddered in turbulent skies, Emma Clarke, the invisible girl in 14A, became visible at last. The radio crackled with urgent voices. Flight 372, this is air traffic control. Confirm status. Say again, do you require assistance? Emma glanced at the co-pilot, who nodded toward the mic. Her throat tightened, but she forced the words out. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is Flight 372. Captain incapacitated. First officer at controls. I have a licensed student pilot assisting. A pause, then a calm reply. Copy that, 372. We'll guide you. Remain calm. Easier said than done. The aircraft lurched again. Passengers screamed. Emma gritted her teeth, correcting the angle like her father once taught her. Gentle hands. The plane wants to fly. Trust her. Her father's lessons whispered through her memory. She steadied the yoke, her knuckles white. The co-pilot shot her a glance, half disbelief, half hope. You've done this before. Emma swallowed hard. Not like this. Hours blurred into minutes. The world outside the cockpit was endless cloud, endless uncertainty. Emma fought not only the controls, but the weight of her own past. Her father's accident replayed in her mind. The sirens, the hospital, the silence that followed. She had sworn never to step into a cockpit again. And yet, here she was, flying a commercial jet with hundreds of souls depending on her. Fear clawed at her chest. Doubt whispered, "You can't do this. You'll fail them like you failed him." But then she remembered the faces in the cabin. The mother rocking her baby, the elderly man whispering prayers, the teenager gripping his guitar case. They weren't strangers anymore. They were lives tied to hers. And for the first time in years, Emma chose courage over silence. As if fate wanted to test her resolve, the storm arrived. Lightning split the sky. Rain hammered the fuselage. Turbulence jolted the plane like a toy in a giant's fist. Alarms screamed. The co-pilot fought with her, shouting instructions over the chaos. Watch your altitude. Hold her steady. Emma's arms burned. Sweat stung her eyes. But her father's voice was louder than the storm. Trust the instruments. Trust yourself. She adjusted, corrected, breathed. Inch by inch, they wrestled the jet through the black maw of the tempest. And then, sudden stillness. They broke through into calm, moonlit sky. Passengers erupted in applause. Emma's chest heaved, tears blurring her vision. For the first time, she believed she might make it. Flight 372, you're cleared for emergency landing. Runway 27, we'll have crews ready. The radio's calm voice belied the gravity of the moment. The hardest part was still ahead. Landing. Emma's stomach turned. She had never landed anything bigger than a Cessna. Now she was guiding a jetliner packed with terrified souls toward asphalt. The co-pilot took her hand briefly. We'll do it together. Side by side, they prepared the descent. Flaps down. Gear down. Speeds checked. The ground rose fast beneath them, lights glittering like stars. The cabin fell silent, every heart beat with hers. Emma whispered to herself, to her father, to the sky, "Please." The wheels screamed as they touched down. The plane shuddered, bounced, then steadied. Brakes roared. The runway blurred. And then, silence. The aircraft rolled to a trembling stop. When the doors opened, rescue crews surged in. Medics rushed the captain away. Passengers poured out, weeping, clapping, some pausing to touch Emma's shoulder in gratitude. She sat frozen, still in the captain's seat, tears streaking her cheeks. "You did it," the co-pilot whispered, awe in his voice. "You saved them." Emma shook her head. "We did." But deep down, she knew the truth. She had broken her silence. She had answered the call. She was no longer the quiet girl in seat 14A. Weeks later, Emma returned to the small hometown airfield she once avoided. The hangar smelled of oil and memory. She slid into the cockpit of a trainer plane, hands steady this time. The sky stretched above her, infinite and forgiving. And as the engine roared to life, Emma Clarke smiled. The quiet girl had found her voice. And it carried on the wind.